match it on the city side. So thank you for that answer. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right. Other comments, questions? Mr. Lichtenhouse.
Are we still going first? All
Whatever
right.
you want, whatever
All right,
you
well, I'll
want.
start with the schools because it's shorter. I've had the good fortune of coming in on, I think, at least a couple easy budgets over the last couple of years, thanks to you guys and the hard work from staff and the city. My favorite part about this part of the year, and I think that it's rare that you can say that, are the budget buddies that you guys assign to us from the school board. I've had the good fortune of spending time over coffee with Greg and Shauna, and I don't know if it's a symptom of this budget year being easy, but my current budget buddy, Laura Downs, promised me a beer about 2 months ago, and I have yet to see that materialize, so I just wanted to put that on public record. Yes. The favorite part of budget season for me has just been yanked from me, so but in all seriousness, I am serious about that, actually. I expect that. But thank you, guys. Greg, thanks for the presentation. Just a couple quick questions. How many schools in Virginia offer a K through 12 IB program? Do you know? It doesn't have to be exact. I mean, I'm just trying to get an idea. Just this one.
That's right.
That's
There are two. Right.
Okay, great. I had a conversation with a friend of mine whose daughter goes to Marshall, and man, I've got my 3 daughters. One of them just going into middle school. Things have really changed. So getting an understanding of how folks are getting up to like close to a 5.0 GPA with all of the diplomas that they're getting, it's totally bananas to me. But what I did get out of the conversation that he had, I've always valued the IB program that we have to that's K through 12, is just the value of that to schools and to others that look at Falls Church having offered that. And it's impressive, and I think I've always thought it was impressive, but I don't think it really resonated with me until I started to talk to peers who have kids that are graduating from high school and what they're doing to kind of kick and scratch to at least get to some semblance of kind of an IB education. The 47 students that we had graduate in 2019 with the IB diploma, just generally speaking, I recognize the value of that. How do we get that from 47 up to, a vast majority of the students? I know it's incredibly rigorous. I'm aware of that, but is there anything else that we can do to help increase that other than general resources? Yeah.
First of all, thank you very much for recognizing the value of the IB program. I do think it is an extraordinarily rigorous program, and when you put it all together, pieces that you have to have in combination with a certain set of scores to be able to get the diploma that are adjudicated externally is not an insignificant task. I also would say it's not for everybody, and I would posit to say that we should not make more IB diplomas the goal, but rather more access to the IB program the goal. And so in my previous budget presentations, some of you might be familiar with Piaget's work. Piaget was a big child psychologist back in the day, and his sample size was 2. It was his kids. And so I often use my own kids as my sample. So my daughter achieved the IB diploma, was a hardworking, solid student, worked really day in and day out. My son, also a solid student when he puts his mind to it, but tends to dabble in school a little bit sometimes. And he's not going to be an IB diploma candidate, but he is taking 4 IB courses. So he's had the exposure to the rigor of the IB program, but is taking courses that he's really excited about. So he's taking the History of the Americas course, he's taking the film study course, he's taking a computer science course, he's taking those things that he's really interested in. So the main goal for me as the superintendent in the IB district is to expose kids to point, and they've had the PYP program and the MYP program. They are really prepared for that rigor in that 11th and 12th grade, but maybe not all as motivated to take that full course load necessary to get the IB diploma. So all that to say, we did see an increase from last year, from the year before to last year. But I would say that a 25% rate of an IB diploma is pretty strong across the
That's
board.
great. Okay. Thanks for that explanation. Just a couple quick questions. The social worker that you guys are bringing on, is that floating for all of the school system? Is that how that works? I just didn't see that assigned to a particular school.
It's currently unassigned. It would be considered a division-wide social work position. We have 2 part-time social workers. So one of the things that may happen is both of those part-time people could go full-time. We have a real need in this system for a social worker that speaks Spanish. And so we may be looking to add another social worker that also speaks Spanish and keep 2 part-time positions. That is something that we'll continue to look at. But we need the position to either make 2 full-time or have 1 new person full-time.
Okay. And then just a question about competitiveness amongst other jurisdictions in terms of staffing and, attracting and retaining the best and brightest teachers that we can. The 11, but I also know that they are absolutely just cash rich because of a lot of the data center revenue that's thrown off. Comparing ourselves to some of the other jurisdictions that have increased that spending, I assume a lot of that goes to, I shouldn't assume that, but does a lot of that go to paying for staff? Is it COLA increases? Is it step increases?
It's a little bit of COLA, it's a little bit of step, and then there has been some readjustment in the broad salary structure in Loudoun and in Fairfax to raise their overall scale rather significantly, so they would infuse into that scale a certain amount of money. So with respect to comparative salaries, the Virginia Education Association, or VEA, did a salary study last year and sent us the data. And one of the things that the data showed was regardless of where you were on the scale, whether you're first year bachelor's, mid-career, master's, end of career with a doctorate, the City of Falls Church was within the top 5 of all the school divisions across the Commonwealth with respect to salary. There are some places that we lag down in 5, and there have been some modifications done in Loudoun County, for example, that have changed the game a little bit. They now have a starting teacher salary that's, but we have the city, and there are some other benefits that are sort of unspoken about that I think we try to do a good job when we recruit. Amy Hall, who's our HR director, was here earlier, and she goes out on recruiting trips with some of our staff and talk about things like our student-teacher ratio is 22-1 or 24-1. We know our families. We get FaceTime with everybody in the division, regardless of who it is. You get to know your superintendent, for better or for worse. You get to see me in the schools. So there are some other intangible benefits that I think the City of Falls Church brings. And to that end, just in the last month, we did our annual survey of staff to find out your intention for next year. And for the first time in the history of Falls Church, we don't have one special education teacher that's given us any indication that they're leaving, which, by the way, is one of the hardest positions to fill across the Commonwealth. So knowing that at this point in time, we're going to have 0 turnover in special ed and minimal turnover in the other positions, we feel like what we're doing is the right mix of STEP and COLA and sort of that Falls Church City, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that, Falls Church City charm that keeps people here.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I would just say that or made it a priority, at least in terms of staying competitive from a salary perspective. Frankly, from staffing both the city and the schools, that's probably my biggest concern over the next 10, 15 years is the competitiveness with other jurisdictions and remaining competitive with pay scale and benefits. So thank you. That's all the questions I have.
I would just build a little bit on that, also to point out that this has actually been after the culmination of a few years of effort from prior boards to get the salary scale for us and benchmarking ourselves against Arlington and Fairfax County to try to bring ourselves more into a more competitive position, which we've succeeded on, within those constraints that we talked about. So.
All right, who's next? Ms. Hardy.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much for great budget presentations all around. I'll start with school since you're already there, Greg. Turning actually towards the CIP, I don't need the answer now, but I think budget is always as good a time as any to talk about capital planning. So while we have clearly a big CIP underway, I don't think it's ever early enough to start planning for the next 10 years out. And when I looked at it, it looks like we have TJ in FY 2026 for $1 million. Do we have anything else on the horizon besides TJ needing some money 5 years from now?
Not that I'm aware of, but I could bring up my book if you really want me to try to answer that
Yeah,
right now.
don't need to answer now. And then a more
Okay.
general question, which I think would be helpful exercise for us as we think about kind of what the need we have at each of our schools in terms of capacity. Hopefully a lot of years at the new Mason that'll open next year. But I'd love to make sure that we are staying on top of that, because I think what I found myself in 4 years ago was realizing, gosh, we had so much capital needs everywhere. And I want to make sure we are more thoughtful now that we have, the big stuff hopefully underway and about to open in the next year, that we're actually looking ahead at the next 10 years and are thoughtfully planning out and spacing out where the growth needs to happen at each of our, buildings, whether it's schools or general government. So I think it's a good discussion, just come budget time. Don't need the answer now.
Okay, sure. Well, I will answer briefly just to say we receive projections for enrollment from Weldon Cooper on an ongoing basis every year. They don't take into account some of the development that's happening locally here, but we are able to do that. And we are paying attention to capacity issues to make sure that we have that space. Right now, we do, and we're just keeping focused on that for coming years, so.
Great. Thank you. And then turning to the general government. Look at my questions there. So Wyatt, as we're going to ask every year, and I think as Ross started alluding to, I'd love for us to know what our numbers look like compared to the region, both in terms of our AV growth as well as planned salary increases, et cetera.
We can certainly get that information to you. The presentation usually has the comparison of all the tax rates for tonight, but we'll get that out to the council as well. But I think that chart looks pretty similar to the way it has in the past.
Great. And then I think it's probably this point, 6 or 9 months ago, we were talking about kind of employee morale and benchmarking salary and benefits. Do we have any of that input into kind of this year's budget? Because I do want to make sure that's top of mind for us as we're caring for our people, that not only we're increasing salaries and giving people raises, but our benefits are also on par with what we think they need to be.
We are still getting the compensation figures from our surrounding jurisdictions, and we will do that comparison. We went off of the best information that we had, and what we're doing on compensation, I believe, is comparable to what to the best information I have right now. Our surrounding jurisdictions haven't finished up their budgets, and in fact, some of the smaller ones haven't presented yet. But based on our information, it is competitive. We are doing an employee survey this year, and I think that gives us good data with what specifically is on employees' minds. And when we do that survey, we also do it with a commitment that we listen to it, we learn from it, and we follow up on those things that we can follow up on.
Great. And being small, I know that often on salary, we may not be as competitive, but I want to make sure we look at total compensation and benefits. So one that stood out to me, and this is really I thought was pretty inadequate. So I would love for us to actually invest in those places, because I think those matter to employee morale at the end of the day, too. Second kind of detailed comment, and then I just have a general one. I just need more time to digest the rest of the budget presentation. So I don't think anyone's forgotten that majority of the comments we've gotten so far in the past 3 months have been on traffic calming. And so I'm glad to see that, number one, we have a lot of money set aside, both from grants as well as in our budget. I want to make sure we also have people to get them done. So I know that within there, it looked like we had one field worker assigned. Is that going to be on traffic calming or all sorts of projects?
It will be on multiple projects, not just traffic calming. But what it really will allow, when projects are under construction, they're very intense in terms of their management demands. And so if you have an engineer that's trying to get something through design, but also managing something that's in construction, then that's how oftentimes a project that's in design gets delayed, because when it's in construction, it just requires their full attention. So having that field engineer will help relieve that and help keep our projects on schedule.
Okay. I'd asked for us to think about whether we actually need more staff to get all of the traffic calming projects done. I know we only have one person right now, and given the desire for all of us, I think, to kind of clear the queue, if we need to increase it just for the year to those things addressed, I think I personally would be willing to support that. On sidewalks, and I think I already prefaced this concern with you, I am not comfortable sharing the sidewalk money with streetlights. So as much as I would love to make sure we do LED streetlights, for me, the priority is not an either or, I think it should be an and. So I would love to make sure we can take care of sidewalks and do